brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking hosts, the good old boys. Suds, Suds, Suds. It's time for more Suds.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi and welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay, there we go.
Yay. Isn't that cozy now?
Already.
And the beeps start flying.
Already.
This is another Suds segment, everyone, where good beer meets really bad radio. With me today at the table for this special occasion is good old boy Mike.
You are accused of heresy on 3 counts. Heresy by thought, heresy by word, heresy by deed, and heresy by action. 4 counts. 4.
3, 4.
Definitely 4.
Now, I'm running the soundboard in lieu of Dave, so I introduced myself channeling Dave's,
That's right.
Yep.
wisdom.
Mojo.
Here.
Dave
That's
Jr.
correct, right. No. Definitely not. No.
4 counts.
No.
Good old boy Kendall, welcome back.
I am happy to be here drinking these beers that are super trendy in the 1800s.
I love that. That's so rad.
Generation A.
Generation A. Oh, yeah. Or pre-A. Good old boy Caperton. Hello.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to be back.
Man.
You smell like old people.
The reason that's so funny is because I get that from time to time. That's why everyone's laughing, right? Is that this is what people think when I'm around.
No.
What is that smell? It smells like career disappointment and aged depends. It's not that bad yet.
Wow.
I'm lucky I'll get there, though.
And over here in this other corner here.
Who's that?
Who is this freak?
Yeah.
Reverend Mark, welcome the heck back.
The Potter is here. Yes. Or today, I'll be Sir Lancelot, the mostly chaste.
Mostly chased.
I like that.
Everybody has to have a goal.
Chased but never caught.
Oh my gosh. Well, today is a brewery takeover episode. Yay! We're going to be reviewing. Oh, listen to that crowd. Listen to that crowd. They're looking at the bottles.
Mike is on
they know
fire
what's
over
going
there.
on. We're going to be reviewing several St. Bernardus beers, which is in Watou, a village in West Flanders, Belgium. St. Bernardus is a staple in the Belgian section of any good beer store, but it's also one of those we tend to overlook. And sometimes, when we're searching for the latest crazy milkshake,
Raspberry.
IPA.
Raspberry
Lots of
milkshake
raspberry
IPA.
milkshake.
Yeah,
Mike's favorite.
Banned once again.
When we're searching for trend, we sometimes forget the traditional. But before we get into that, this SUDS segment is brought to you by
The People Against Lactose Excess. The American craft beer industry is at a critical moment in its history, so let me speak directly to all the brewers. Hey, guys, you found milk sugar. Yay for that. It makes beers thicker and sweeter. We get it. We get it already. Lactose in a stout? That's cool. Milkshake IPA? It's like, okay, I can deal with that maybe. But where does it stop, folks? Lactose lager? Milk sugar Michelada? See where we're
Banned
slippery
once
slope.
again.
So please, brewers, stop this before it's too late.
Stop that insanity.
Pale. The people.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, we have some notes about St. Bernardus. Now, I'm not sure who should read them, though. I mean, we got Reverend Mark.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've been to monasteries
got me.
before,
You speak their
know,
word.
right?
He's orally talented.
I hang out in monasteries. Yes.
You do. But then, well, Mike, you spend most of your day walking around in a robe. And can you just close that, even though we're sitting down? Okay, so I guess, you know what? We're going to go with Reverend Mark.
Okay.
Place those bets now.
Okay, folks. But just take note of the fact that I am from the South, which means I'm phonetically challenged. So let's roll with this.
Yeah.
Okay, a short history on St. Bernardus. In the early 1900s, the Trappists fled the Mendicat, which is named after a local tribe in France, and they escaped to Watou, Belgium, where they would not have to be taxed. There, they took up residence at the Pottershoff farm, also known as Cordiwal, just a stone's throw from the current brewery. They renamed their new home the Refuge de Notre Dame de Saint Bernard and began making cheese. Fast forward a little to the 1930s, France became more lenient about taxes, and so the monks decided to move back to their original location. They vacated their dairy, and it was taken over by Évariste de Connick. Not long after the Second World War, Évariste de Connick was invited by the Trappist monks at West Letteren to brew and market their Trappist beers under license. I was going to say licorice.
Licence.
Originally covering their 30-year period. Brewmaster Mathieu Zavransky brought his considerable know-how to this new site, bringing both recipes and the very famous St. Sixtus yeast as the new brewery was established right next to the cheese workshop.
So I wonder if they were cross utilization, of yeast in between what they were using in the cheese shop and the brewery at all. That would make a lot of sense. If you're good at one, you tend to be good at the other.
Sure.
Because you're working with something infecting something else or fermenting.
They are likened skills. Yes.
And it takes a lot of beer to make cheese. So, as you're making
And
cheese.
eat it as
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, in 1962, a new 30-year deal was signed to keep the beer flowing until 1992. In 1992, the agreement expired for good, and as the Trappist breweries had decided to award the authentic Trappist beer label exclusively to beers that had been brewed inside an abbey. So from that time on, the brewery's beers were marketed under the St. Bernardus brand name.
Big doings.
Yeah, so that was one thing that when we were sitting down, I actually thought this was still part of that branding, so the 14 monasteries that have this label of Trappist beers.
Right.
And this is not in that 14,
Right.
which I couldn't remember. There have been very few changes over the last 5 years, but honestly, I just couldn't remember on the fly if they were in and out. So they're out.
Right.
They're not part of the tribe.
And there's some label artwork that I saw where you go back to the period where that rule had not been declared, and the monk had a skull cap, and then after it, the skull cap is removed.
I never noticed that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mr. Fancy Pants, huh?
Check out the knowledge base on Reverend Mark.
But I'd read some history on this.
Well, that's just like your opinion, man.
I'd read the history on this brewery, and a lot of these are those original West Fletren recipes that they are still brewing.
Right.
Even though Westy is now doing their own thing and using Westmahl's yeast, these are kind of the authentic ones.
Yeah, and we'll actually talk about that as we get closer to talking about some of these beers, because we've had both West Leiteren and these beers in the past, and we'll talk about how close those really are at the end of the day.
And the fact that we've now pronounced that brewery's name 3 different ways.
Correct. That's right.
But it is West Liederen, right? Oh,
I actually heard a Belgian guy say it once, and I cannot say it like that. I think just totally different way of pronouncing
We're
it.
American.
You're accused of heresy on 3 counts. Heresy by thought, heresy by word, heresy by deed, and heresy by action. 4 counts.
4 counts.
It's going to be true so many times during this episode.
Oh, totally. Right now, good old boy Mike, would you cinch up your robe and tell us about these beers that we're going to be tasting today?
I think the key word is cinch.
Yes.
Hitch it up, buddy.
Today, we're going to be having the following 5 beers from St. Bernardus. The St. Bernardus ABT 12, a 10% quad. The St. Bernardus Prior 8, an 8% Dubel. The St. Bernardus Potter 6, a 6.7% Dubel. The St. Bernardus Tripel, 8% Triple. And the St. Bernardus Wit, a 5.5% white beer.
Yep.
Yum.
There you go.
You know, it's just such a classic part of
It is.
Monty Python. You know?
And it sort of sums up the crew here a little bit. We're whacking the bottles into our heads.
I definitely need a lot more beer to get through the rest of this episode.
Yes. I like
Yeah.
to self-flagellate with the triple myself.
All right.
Are we allowed to talk about that on the radio?
Apparently, we just did.
As I can hear the
Dirty-
NPR
you
sensor
dirty
actually
bird.
leaping across the room, hit the kill switch.
Oh my God. Where is that dark commercial break?
More beer, table 8. That's what we need right here.
Speaking of which, we'll be back after this brief interlude. Welcome back, everyone. As the monks are with us, blessing us on this most holy of beer episodes.
Correct. Amen.
Oh, man. Well, Reverend Mark, are you ready for this?
It's Caperton.
Oh,
It's Caperton. But we'll
good old boy
we'll back you up.
Caperton.
It's me.
We'll back you up.
It's me.
Oh, yeah.
We got our move for you.
Please do the honor of reading us this suds.
I would be
Ratings.
happy to. We'll be discussing and rating these beers with the Suds ratings plus our signature belching sounds. Here are those ratings now. A rating of 1. That sucks. Give me anything but a bud. There we go. There's rating of 2. Was that a belch? Rating of 3. Ah, what a relief. Rating of 4. A body should not really make that sound. It's getting holy. And a rating of 5. Listen to that hang time. Give me another. That was bad. They're not letting me in.
I never
heaven
thought
now.
that I would try to do TM humming with fart sounds in the
Yeah,
background.
yeah. They're not letting any of us into heaven. Wow. So thanks, guys.
Wow.
Get to the beer.
I think we did something there.
Dude, I think my lips are numb now.
I think you're. I actually think you're a pretty good cantor.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to have something to fall back on.
Put that at the top of your resume.
Gosh, yes. Okay. Let's get started.
Okay.
St. Bernardus, ABT 12. It is widely regarded as one of the best beers in the world, if not the universe. It is therefore no surprise that it is the brewery's flagship beer, ranked at the very top of the St. Bernardus beer hierarchy. It is brewed in the classic quadruple style and adheres to the original 1946 recipe.
I love this beer.
Yeah. I think that recipe goes back further than 46, I thought, right?
Yeah, I thought it was one of the originals.
I think this is one of the oldest. It's one of the oldest. I think that's one of the marketing dealios is that it's the oldest beer recipe in production.
This is just pure magic, raisins, spices. I can actually hear Christmas carols as I'm, drinking this. I mean, it's just, this is so wonderful. I love it in a bottle. I love it in a glass. I love it on draft. I love it often.
Yep.
Yeah, if you can find it on draft, get it. It is spectacular.
Yeah, I thought it had a very rich composite malt, toffee, raisin, rich fruit. And the nose was like a Weissenbach. I mean, it had that banana that was just, it took me into all different kinds of beer directions.
So like the best Belgians, right? The yeast plays a role in every one of these beers that we're drinking today. And it's just, this thing drinks like an 8% beer. I mean, they're all super drinkable, I think.
And that's a classic sign of all these Trappist style beers is the monks actually have a word they call digestible, which to us basically means easy drinking. Even though this is big and complex and rich and high in alcohol, it's a very easy drinking beer.
Sure.
It is. I mean, you don't taste the alcohol in this at all. It's just creamy enough that it's so layered, but it's so light on the tongue. It's very impressive.
The carbonation on all of these is just super on point.
Silky smooth.
One of the stories of the Trappist brewing history is that the quadruple is, of course, the top beer, the top strength, but that the single, double, triple, quadruple also denotes when the beers can be consumed. And during the work week, the singles are allowed to be drunk at the end of the day. The doubles are for Sundays only. The triples are for high holy days, and the quadruple is if the bishop is around.
The big guys in town.
So we're having all these beers on the
big guy
same
is
day.
in town today.
So if we're having them all in one sitting, what's that make us?
The Pope.
Yeah. It's good to be the Pope.
There you go.
Or next to godliness.
So I love this brief conversation about Westy 12, because this beer definitely is I think a dead ringer for Westy 12. And in fact, I actually remember somebody doing a blind tasting of Belgian quads, and the West Liederin and this were in there, and everybody picked this as the West Liederin in that blind tasting.
It is so similar. And when we're talking about those rare beers, like Treehouse Julius or Westy 12, I think one of the things that makes them special is they are great beers, but they are hard to find. And Westy 12 is extremely hard to find. If you can, drink it. But if you can't, drink St. Bernardus 12.
Yeah. Definitely when I think of the Westmalle, that is a bit more lighter and cola forward than what this is. This is like a 20-layer painting.
Super complex.
Is the thing I really love about this. All the way around.
And as it warms up, it completely changes the landscape, which is so great compared to what it was when it was cold. But this is an all year round beer too. Yep. I mean, we're in the dead of summer and it's still so delectable.
I'll have more today.
Yeah. My cups are full.
I think we'll all have more. Well, we're going to rate the St. Bernardus ABT 12 a 5.
Good.
Moving on, we're going to go to the St. Bernardus Prior 8. It's a traditional Abbey beer, brewed in the classic Dubel style. The original recipe dates back to the times when they still brewed under license for the monks of Westy, because I can't say that word.
Me either.
Give it a shot.
Westy. I know my limitations.
West Fluttering?
There you go.
West Lettering.
What she said.
Yes. What she said.
Definitely slightly sweet, kind of roasty. And in fact, we'll talk a little bit about maybe some crossover, in terms of style with this that Kendall and I were chatting about. But, I mean, even at times kind of approaching some aspects of old ale,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But incredible balance. Again, really great beer.
To me, this is the only one where I knew it was a little high ABV. I get just a little touch of alcohol. It's never hot, but it's there.
Yeah.
Right.
There's like an astringency as it's kind of warmed up here. Yeah.
And I think there's an acceptable level, and it is with many of these kind of beers of phenols. I mean, just a little bit of spice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit of that peppery note.
It picks up that pepper and clove and
Coriander.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a touch.
I'm tasting the yeast strain a little bit more on this one as opposed to the ABT 12, but still just it's a great
You're still getting that banana,
spice layer cake,
Belgian,
Yeah.
kind of thing coming through on this.
Similar flavors to the 12. I would say this one doesn't have the intensity or complexity of the 12, but it's also very close in styles. And I think this one blurs the line between a Dubel and a Quad.
Yeah.
Well, and that was what Kendall and I were chatting about. I actually wrote down that I thought this was close to a light porter because it really had kind of a bit of a roasty quality about it. And it didn't look at the style, even though I knew the 8 was a Dubel. When I sat down, this was the first one in the flight that I had. And I actually wrote down this is a light porter with a big question mark, kind of beside it.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of those chocolatey notes that you get out of a porter. Like you always call it Tootsie Roll.
Yeah, Tootsie Roll is a classic taste profile. I think of when you have a great porter.
Yeah, quite yummy. Well, the St. Bernardus Prior 8s, we rated a 4. Moving on, we're going to go to the St. Bernardus Pater 6. It is brewed according to the classic Dubel style with a recipe that dates back to 1946. The name of this beer has become a reference for its style and is commonly referred to as Een Paterki? Paterki? Forgive me. Yeah.
There you go. That's Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
You were not almost there.
How do you say that?
You fake it well. You have to channel your inner Southern.
The bell, your inner bell.
Hey.
So we had a story that happened around this beer. That was one of the few beers that our ability of sourcing this and getting something fresh was highly frustrated. And actually, this beer had a born-on date that was past 2 years. So all we can say about starting off this...
You smell like old people.
Or a Best Buy Best Buy date, not a born on date.
Which means it was probably brewed about a year before that.
It was born on way before.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just
this beer's probably about 3.5 years old.
Expired and gone to see its maker.
That's classic.
Some of my tasting notes around this were very cola-like. I actually wrote down this is split between a blend of Pepsi and Sprite. With a bit of cardboard.
It's actually not a terrible description, dude.
All I can say is I keep it real,
warm,
I just
that's not
bring it down to full-blown
idiot,
tasting notes.
Yeah. Well, as we dusted the dust off the bottle, I thought, this was once a really good beer.
Once a really good beer,
Yeah.
Maybe so.
The thing I like about this beer is it shows kind of the breadth of styles you can have in Belgian beers. I feel like some styles are way more rigid. Like a German Pils, you know exactly what to expect.
Yeah, exactly.
Belgian Dubel, this is on the lighter end. They can be a little bit lighter in color, a little bit darker, then a little more richer, fruitier. And I think this one is like its brother, the 8, is much lighter in every characteristic, flavor, intensity. It's a beautiful beer. If you could find it fresh, I think you would really enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a little unbalanced right now, I think.
It's nasty. I just had another taste.
Slightly
it's been
oxidized.
it's after it's been sitting out here for about a half hour with us, it is just
It traveled the long way to get here.
wow, man! It
did.
didn't improve with age. It didn't
we'll
improve.
pardon.
Period. It really took a turn for the South
I
for
think
sure.
as it warmed up, it did. My last sip there was probably the best of the bunch.
Okay, all right.
Well, I'm sure in its prime, it's gorgeous, but even for it being as old and as bad as it is, it's still tolerable though.
Sure,
You know what I mean?
Sure, I wouldn't use the word bad.
Which you could say is
Slightly
somewhat-
oxidized, and it's a little.
Well,
yeah.
The thing I like about this conversation is that I mean, how many of us that sell our beer, we always go, Belgians, you can sell her forever.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I mean,
say that.
how many times have we said that, to other people as well as, we have that in practice. And I think this is a prime example where, not so much. And I don't know if this was light blighted, or skunked
Right.
maybe a bit.
Yeah. Well, it's the difference between cellaring and shuffling across the country and across the world. I mean, so things being in bottles, being in movement, and being in different micro environments, and
Sure,
that's
different
a-
temperature changes.
I don't know the recipe here, but I think for all of these beers from this brewery, they are more. They've tended more hop forward maybe than a lot of Belgian, like classic Belgian styles. Like a couple of these beers, the hop presence was in there. I mean, it was noticeable.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just yeast and malt. There was.
I get that
There
on
was some
eight.
fruitiness. There was like some late edition hops. Like fruity aroma type stuff. But
You're giving a preview of that next one. You talk about
so maybe
hop
this
beer.
this one, maybe this one's fallen off in that respect.
Well, it's a little to me, it's just more like
But
a
it's-
stringent. It's astringent more
it's a
than
little
anything else.
oxidized.
But anyways,
Well, I think the question I wanted to throw out is, would you go back and cellar these beers? I mean, based on what this experience was with this, look at them. They're like,
The 12, I think the 12 for sure.
The
right?
12, 12 holds up. I think
Yeah.
the 8 could under the right conditions,
Sure,
but
I do
I
too.
think like most beers, they're best fresh, and that 6 is probably going to hold up a year or two. But you're generally going to want to drink it
Maybe
sooner
the
than
triple. Maybe the triple could stand a little shelf time.
This is a bottle with a message in, and the message is beware.
Yeah, and the 6 only being a 6.7%
well,
alcohol.
yeah, that's what I was just
it
going to
doesn't.
say.
You really need 8% or above
Yeah.
to cellar for
Yeah.
a long period of
Need
time.
a little
So this really
booziness
isn't the
to-
one that you're going to cellar.
Yep.
I mean, not that you necessarily would, anyways, because
so this is a good lesson learned that it's not just a matter of the style of the beer or the yeast component, that you're really working with, or if it's infected, if you're looking for some bottle conditioning of some kind, you really have to pay attention to the style of beer that you're working with as well. And I think ABV is a good, a good.
Yeah, I think
Indicator.
8%.
Yeah.
8% is minimum.
I think as Mark pointed out, the only beers like the quad would be like how often, they wouldn't be served that often. So it's going to
No.
be
That is an aging beer.
and all of these lower beers were drank way more frequently.
Yeah.
So they probably wouldn't even get a chance to
I have
cellar.
some Belgian
Yeah.
quads that I've probably had in excess of 10 years that I've pulled out that are just amazing, They're
Really
like
open
butter.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got this 12 actually in a Magnum bottle that I've been saving for a special occasion. It's in my
Attaboy.
cellar fridge, so sitting at 55 degrees. It's at least 5 years old, and I'm guessing it's still just fine.
I'm so disappointed
Yeah.
that, with Reverend Mark butchering so much of the preamble, background, that was a special occasion.
I should have brought it.
Well, today we are rating the Patra 6 a 3, but I'm sure that in different circumstances it would be a lot higher.
Yeah,
All right,
maybe.
Sorry, guys.
But we can only imagine.
true.
We can only work with what we got.
So now, moving on, let's go to something slightly more ABV in the Tripel. So it's a traditional Abbey beer that follows the classic Tripel style. In the Watou region, a Tripel is often referred to as a Bernardus. Oh God, forgive me, Belgium, forgive me.
We're never getting in there.
No, we're not. A fine tribute that pays homage to Bernadette, who was the youngest daughter of Évariste de Conic, the man whom the monks of Abbey Saint Marie du Mont-de-Cat sold their Belgian property in 1934. Okay, that's
Correctamundo.
That's a lot of verbiage.
See,
A lot of verbiage. But
Boy.
what a completely differently beautiful color on this one.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
one of the biggest differences. A lot of people think Belgian beer is dark, and triples
Not
have
all,
a gorgeous,
no.
deep gold color. That's
yeah, they're
brilliant.
I mean, the number of times I looked and tasted, and between getting a Belgian, a golden Belgian, and a triple, really screwed up. That's pretty easy to do. That tip off is the Pilsner malt. I think is usually the big tip off difference between the two, and usually Belgian Golden is a bit sweeter and there's a lot more banana.
You can smell it.
A lot more.
Forward on that.
Triples are pretty hop forward of all the Belgian beers. They can be quite hoppy.
Well, I look forward to what the Triple Master has to say about this beer, as well as making more beers.
Yes.
We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back, everyone. Today is a special holy episode.
Sorry, I cut it off a little early. Clunk.
Wow. Okay. I'm sure there'll be some editing after this. So, for those of you just joining, hi. We are discussing some beers from St. Bernardus, which is in Watou, which is a village in West Flanders, Belgium.
Do they have the dogs there as well? Just that's been bugging me. Like
I'm sure they do.
the dogs with the little
They do.
the little kegs.
Right, exactly. I'm
The St.
sure there's a
Bernards, yeah.
slight
Is that a different guy?
They have people out.
I think it's the same guy, different region.
Are you the
Okay.
guy that wanders around Lower Broad? He goes, is there music around down
What is
here?
this thing down here going on? What's going on down here?
Ooh.
Well, I got to know, It's
Okay.
like the more you know.
Well, right before the break, we were going to start talking about the St. Bernardus triple.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
and we got into the color, but now
did.
let's discuss.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to tell you that as a home brewer, the triple was one of the first Belgian beers that I brewed successfully.
A lot.
A lot. Yeah. After I got it down, I just kept repeating it. I said, if I got it right the first time, let's see if I can keep dialing it in. And for me, this particular St. Bernardus triple has always been the benchmark, or has been one of the couple of benchmark triples that I aim for when I brew.
Which is why Reverend Mark has the bottle sitting right next to
Yes,
him.
right.
Yeah, he does.
Keep your hands off the bottle.
He's claimed it. He's marked it.
How much metal have you taken home with your Belgian triple? What, 50? 50 golds?
Well, I've been competing for 20 years,
Yeah.
but I'd say that
Easily.
when I've always got a triple in there, and there are just a few things you do. Of course, use the very finest Belgian Pilsner malt that you can come up with, and then I typically mash at a low temperature, which allows there to be more fermentable sugar. Because I tend to like my triples on the dry side and on the minerally side, and not on the malty side.
We're getting all the feels here.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And one thing also that I denote here as I swirl this glass around and look at the light foamy head is that it is all these beers are well carbonated, but this one is very well carbonated.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I really like about triples is that typically when I'm bottling and I throw in my priming sugar. I put extra sugar in just to make it even more effervescent. I mean, almost champagne-like, not quite, but right up there to being champagne-like. And so I get that out of this one too. I think also that this is a really great beer to start drinking as you pull it out of the refrigerator and just open it and drink it cold, because there's certain things that you get, like the mineral, it's kind of the subtle spice that you get there at the very beginning. But then once it starts opening up, then some of the esters, the fruits start coming up.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
what I do when I brew them is I start out at a lower ambient temperature, and then once I'm about 50-60% through the fermentation, I actually raise the ambient temperature a little bit to get a little bit of fruit there at the end. But I like to start out cold so that it is mostly, just a dry beer.
Sure.
And then it finishes with a high attenuation. So I think this beer is exactly what I aim for.
Sure.
This one right here is just you
benchmark.
can't improve on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can taste all those things in this beer. The Pilsner really stands out.
Very much
I
so.
mean, it's just every element is
The Pilsner is
identifiable
definitely
here.
the star of this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the scheme of things,
Gorgeous malt.
Exactly. I mean, what we have laid out is, you look at this beer on the shelf and you're like, maybe, right?
And it's
right.
always there, right?
I know it's always there, but
yeah.
this is a lesson in what it is to be a really good brewer and to know how your yeast works and to it's almost like being a conductor of a symphony. I know this sounds really cheesy, but it's the blending of all of these different elements together in perfect timing to be able to produce something like this.
I like to use the tightrope analogy.
Yeah.
Walking a tightrope
Exactly.
between all these things.
But you talk about breweries that make IPAs and they're wonderful IPAs. Yeah, that's great and all, and throwing in a ton of hops, at various
a lot more
times.
dimensions here.
Well,
this
exactly.
is a multi-dimensional beer.
This is so different, and there's so much love and care that goes into this that you taste, and then being able to draw out so many different flavors from when it's cold to when it warms up, and it completely changing. It's like sitting in front of a really good painting and then watching it sort of open up to you.
Sure.
And
Anyways.
I think also there is a certain kind of simplicity on the far side of complexity in this beer.
Yeah.
It's really a very simple beer if you look at your grain
malt
bill.
you're right.
Your grain bill. It's just like it's Pilsner malt. You might put a little bit of aromatic in there. Sometimes these days I might put a little acidulated, but not always. I also, tend to put a little bit of wheat just to promote, especially beer like this, a little bit more
persistent.
not
Wheat.
weed.
Hey, what?
Not
Is that
weed.
episode, is it that episode already?
We are not recording in Denver. Thank you very much.
It's coming, Mark. It's coming.
But really, it's a very simple beer, and yet there's just something exquisitely complex about it. If
it's super drinkable, but if you want to reflect on this beer, there's a lot to reflect on. There for sure.
Yep.
So balanced in so many ways. The one thing I like about this beer is when I poured it compared to the others, that gorgeous head that you were talking about, but that opens up a lot of those notes, and that's where I got those hop notes originally. A lot of these are, I was getting malt right away. Caramel, toffee, but on this one, those
More than
floral, those herbal notes
Yes.
that were just popping
Exactly
up
what
when it
I
was
wrote,
freshly poured. It was gorgeous.
Yeah. That's why you really need to enjoy this beer over the kind of the temperature spectrum. From freshly poured, cold out of the refrigerator, and just
As
let
we
it
have
sit.
right here.
Yeah.
And I think we've really seen how well, this beer is held up even over a half hour, sitting in the glass, for sure. I have this really, this interesting activity that's kind of happening out in front of me, with, somebody that's kind of being introduced to beer for the first time, where they really don't like a lot of hops, and hoppy beers. And so they're chasing all of these saisons, and they think that, saisons are the greatest thing since sliced bread.
They are.
They are. I knew you were going to say that. So,
But there's so much variation with
Sorry.
saisons.
There is.
There's so much variation.
It's a blurry playing field there.
but the other thing that's playing out is that I'm really. I actually had one of Mark's triples in in a flight, and this person happened to pick it up, and they were enjoying it. And they were like, "Wow, what's this?" And I go, "I don't know. What do you think of it?" You know.
Yeah.
And they were like, "I think this is really good. It's not a saison." And I go, "You are correct. It is not."
Right.
And they're like, "Well, it has like a bigger mouthfeel, to it." And I'm like, "Wow, that's the first time this person has used mouthfeel, correctly."
That's good stuff.
But I think if anything, I didn't really think about, as watching somebody's kind of journey with beer and kind of learning, watching their palate kind of evolve. This is kind of that half granny step, to beers that are not necessarily hop free, but I would not consider this hoppy. This is definitely a very malt forward beer.
Right.
So it has, a lot more floral kind of bready, kind of quality to it. And I think a lot of people would really embrace, this. And how many times have we said, if we moved back to a lot of the base beer styles and stopped with a lot of the adjunct city, how many times would that really show the quality of the beer making that really is at play?
Sure.
Because I have had so many triples that are hosed and screwed up.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so that is, to me, that simple recipe is almost, like 90% technique at the end of the day.
It is. It's technique, and it's also, as you learn to brew, and as I consult with people that are wanting to get into that as a hobby, I say, you've got to learn to brew true to style. And this is one of those styles that you really need to practice.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
No, I totally concur, because for as simple as you said the recipe is, it's those subtle differences, those nuances, I should say, that really make the difference between a meh and a ooh,
Right.
the skill of the monks and taking something is such simple ingredients and making it complex without using breakfast cereals in their mash is astounding. It is very simple, and it's amazing, and it's a holy work.
Right.
Well,
Did you catch that?
but it's,
Did he say the monks use this in the breakfast cereal? That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Is that what you heard?
No
That's
fruity
what I heard.
pebbles necessary.
No.
And
they're
one thing
happy
we've been harping on all along
shot.
in this, in the show about all these Belgian beers is that the yeast is so much a part of the character more than a lot of other kinds of beers on the market.
Sure.
And I think another thing to learn as you're learning to brew Belgian beers is to split a batch and use two different kinds of Belgian strains just to see exactly what these yeasts do.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what you'll get.
And this is really one of the best beer styles to do that with.
Right.
Saisons as well. But
I don't brew like you guys, though. I'd like to have. There'll be another episode where I'm biting my tongue over here. I think it's great to brew to style. I do. I think it's educational, and I think you learn a lot. But
I think that's what Reverend Mark's hitting at. If you're a brand new brewer, brew to style. Otherwise, you'll never know if you're any good or not.
Yeah,
you got to know that.
Don't go
I'm
for the
not-
raspberry IPA milkshake.
that's not what I'm saying either. But I'm not sure I agree.
Give the
with
world a
that.
break
No.
on lactose.
well, but my logic is, as when I started out, I wanted to brew to style because
Yeah.
there were some benchmark beers that I really enjoyed.
So is brew to style anything that doesn't have fruity pebbles in it? Because
Well,
that's not what I'm saying.
No.
here,
That's a style now.
It is a
It is a style.
It is a style.
But if you
I think this Mark represents a generation of homebrewers that were competitive and active in competitions, and there were marks that needed to be, pardon the pun, needed to be hit along the way.
Sure.
Not you, but
Right.
but benchmarks that needed to be hit. And I don't know, man. I think I represent a generation of brewers that just say I'll call this beer a saison, but it's not a saison. I'm like hopping it with Citra.
Well, you can call a saison. I mean, a saison can be almost anything. Because
It is.
It's a farmhouse.
That's a bad example. A triple is pretty much has to be a triple.
So
I
I love all the innovations that are going on, and I do that myself. But I think that my point about brewing true to style is that it's kind of like learning to play the piano. Just learn your scales.
and learn your chords
before
and
you
get
start.
your basics down.
Yeah, before you start going into atonal music, learn your scales.
Yeah.
And so, or as they say in writing, you got to know the rules to break the rules.
I came here for a good argument.
No, you didn't. You came here for an argument.
I would love to have this argument, but not today.
Okay. So for the St. Bernardus Tripel that we are loving and adoring, we're going to rate this a 4.
Yeah.
Although I think for some people this might be a 5.
I wrote
me
a
included.
4/5.
Yeah. Now, the last beer that we're going to discuss today is the St. Bernardus Wit.
Yay.
It is a traditional, unfiltered Belgian white beer. It was developed in collaboration with Pierre Celis, the legendary, and I mean legendary, master brewer who founded the Hoegaarden Brewery, brewing their signature beer that was the driver of the resurgence of white beer or wit beers in the 1950s. Now, of note, what is really cool about this
in a can.
Exactly. Yeah. So for a little over a year now, we're able to get this beer.
Pass that around.
That was sexy.
In the U.S. market only, I might add.
That's why I was curious.
Yeah.
Such a great style. And it's a good, when you think summer beer, this is one of my summer beers. And now that you can buy it in a can and
Why
take it
not?
anywhere, take it to the beach, take it on a boat.
Yep.
It's
Why not?
brilliant.
All the things.
You should take every White Claw out of your cooler and put one of these in place.
Absolutely.
Wit Claw.
And having it in a can, and for those of us that live in the South, it's all about having beers in the can for the summer to enjoy our summer activities.
Pack it in, pack it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, how perfect. And I
This
hope
is a
that
beer
this
you want to pack.
exactly.
Sure.
I hope this
beer.
helps them sell even more.
Love this beer. Classic coriander, orange peel. This is just, Belgian Wet City, all day long.
Yeah, almost prototypical.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
yeast, everything's here. It's just a standout beer.
Very classy. And we rated the St. Bernardus Wit a 4.
Yay.
So, briefly, do we want to talk about the difference between Trappist beers and Abbey ales?
Let's just talk about the flight for a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great flight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely Belgian 101 city right here.
Yep.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah, if you're interested in Trappy and or Abbey style beers, hit all the St. Bernardus.
And it's wherever you buy your beers in the Belgian section. These beers are there almost 100% of the time. That's the great thing.
Yeah, and I think there's something for everyone, going from, really light beers like the Wit that's very coriander spicy, all the way to the deep dark fruits.
Yeah, you see that ABT 12 on the beer list? Yeah, you're getting a glass of that.
Yeah, especially on tap.
What does that mean? I don't care, but they told me to order it.
Exactly.
Well, that wraps up another episode, everyone.
Oh.
I know.
I'm just getting started.
That was fun.
Sorry. You can always find us where you found this episode, as well as on radio, satellite, online at iTunes, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and nearly any place you listen to a podcast. The easiest way to find this show on your phone is to ask Alexa, Siri, or Google, play podcast Sips, Suds, and Smokes.
I'm here somewhere.
Oh. And
We love your feedback, and you can reach us online wherever Reverend Mark finds this section at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com.
sorry, got off script.
Glad that wasn't me. Our daily tasting notes flow out on Twitter and Instagram every day at Sips Suds Smoke, and our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news.
Please take the time to rate this episode if you're listening online.
Good boy Kendall, please tell us about your blog.
My beautiful wife and I blog about the good news of good beer at beermix3.com.
Good boy Mike.
Hey, thanks for joining us this week. Come back and join us for another great episode of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, and I'll ask you to keep on sipping.
Good boy Kendall.
It was a pleasure. Cheers.
Good boy Caperton.
This was fun. I love this episode. Always good to be here.
Reverend Mark.
Hey, as a man of the cloth, this is the beer I desire the most. So thank you for inviting me to the table.
This is good old gal Julieanna. Being enlightened by the higher ones today. Keep on chuggling, and we'll catch you next time.
There we go.
This has been a one tan hand production of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.